I recognize the member from Saskatoon University.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to stand in my place today and support the motion as presented by the member from Regina Gardner Park. Mr. Speaker, this motion is all about choice. The Theodore decision is all about choice, and choice for the parents to pick and choose which education they're going to have for their child. As a government, we stand for fair and equitable education throughout our province. This Theodore decision will affect between 5,000 and 10,000 kids in every corner of Saskatchewan. Freedom of choice is a basic right in our country, Mr. Speaker. Where our children are educated has to be one of the most important decisions that a parent can make, and we need to ensure that they continue to have that ability. If ever there was a motion that the opposition should support, this is the one. Mr. Speaker, my parents, Joan and Mel, were both Catholic school teachers. My father was a principal in Saskatoon, and my mom taught for 35 years as well. So being raised as a Catholic with parents that were both teachers in the Catholic system, I didn't have much of a choice. They had a choice, but I didn't have much of a choice whether I attended Catholic or public school. But having said that, there was the choice. Cardinal Leger School, where I attended, was a great school. Great teachers, great administration, principals, sports teams, arts, drama. But so was College Park, just across the park. They had the same opportunities that I had when I went to Cardinal Leger. But, Mr. Speaker, many of the families in my school and many of my friends weren't Catholic. Some of them were Protestant, Lutheran, you name it, Mr. Speaker. We had every religion in that school. They had the choice to go to that school. Now, why they made that choice, I'm not sure. It could be many different reasons. It could be the teachers, it could be the school sports teams, because we were pretty dominant in the late 80s when I went there. But whatever the decision that their parents made, they had the choice. And that's what's being taken away in this court ruling out of Theodore.
You bet.
We can't fund one student and not the other in a school that was chosen by their parents. Doesn't matter what school that they choose to go to, whether it's public, Catholic, independent, associate schools. We can't, as a government, make those choices for parents. Choices, Mr. Speaker, should be made by the parents, and we're not in the business of picking those for those parents. After I heard about the decision in Theodore, Mr. Speaker, I looked back and I thought, how would that affect my family right now? And I came up with a fairly good analogy and an anecdote, and I'll share it here. My son Connor graduated from grade 8 in a Catholic school, went to St. Joseph's High School in Saskatoon, another Catholic school. When he was halfway through grade 10, he decided that to follow his dream of becoming a mechanic, an automotive service technician, which is what he wanted to do, he wanted to enroll in the public high school, Walter Murray, Mr. Speaker, because they had an automotive service technician program, and he was interested in it. He was allowed to go and transfer into Walter Murray, Mr. Speaker, and take classes that enable him now to register and enroll at Sask Polytechnic. It gave him the bedrock. It gave him the opportunity to see what he was getting into, number one, and number two, see if he would thrive at it. Mr. Speaker, he won a couple of awards at Walter Murray as he was going through the program, and I'm quite proud of that.
Right on.
If the role was reversed, if the situation was reversed, and we weren't Catholic, and Connor was going to a public school, but yet St. Joseph's had that program, my son, under this decision, wouldn't be allowed, unless I paid for it, to go to that program, get the education that he really wanted, to follow his dream, and become that mechanic that he is going to be. And I'm glad, because my car needs repairs all the time. But he wouldn't be allowed to do that unless I paid for it out of my pocket, even after I've paid all the same taxes that everybody else has had. Mr. Speaker, there's also another story that I'll touch briefly on. The member from Saskatoon Westview, his daughter has special needs. When she was going to look at entering the school system, they enrolled her at St. Augustine School, once again a good Catholic Saskatoon University school, because they had individual programs for children that needed that little extra help, that could help her before she got into the school system. That was at St. Augustine, Mr. Speaker. Now, the member from Saskatoon Westview isn't Catholic. That program was offered at that Catholic school at that time, and it enabled her to not fall behind. She was able to stay with her classmates and able to continue her education and not fall behind. Mr. Speaker, the Theodore decision would stop that, unless, once again, the parents can pay for it. Mr. Speaker, that's not fair, it's not equitable, and it takes away choice. Our government supports both public and Catholic school systems. We also support the historical high schools, associated schools, and qualified independent schools. A couple of them are in Saskatoon, Mr. Speaker, the Saskatoon Christian School, and in Saskatoon University, the Saskatoon Misbah School. We have a heritage and a history that we need to protect. Our government has been a strong supporter of education, Mr. Speaker, throughout our mandates. I hear every day that we're cutting, that we're not providing the education or the dollars that we need to for our students. What I can't understand is why the members opposite think that because we fund these other schools and these other systems, that it takes away from the public system. It doesn't. We're not sharing the same pie. We made the pie bigger, Mr. Speaker. And I've got numbers here. I've got numbers here that back that up. In 2007, overall funding for education was less than $1 billion. In 2016, it was over $2 billion, Mr. Speaker. That's an increase of 114% when student enrollment only went up 10%. Operating budget, $1.41 billion in 2007. Exactly. $1.86 billion in 2016, up 32%, Mr. Speaker. Overall, we have invested in capital spending in our schools, Mr. Speaker, $1.5 billion. We've opened 40 new schools.
They closed 176.
25 major renovations, Mr. Speaker. We've opened 15,200 daycare spaces over the last 9 years, Mr. Speaker, up 62%. We've added 161 pre-kindergarten programs, up 104%, and we created the first early years plan, Mr. Speaker. I would say that we're investing in our education system, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. Here you are. Working with the people. Awesome.
Now, it's hard to believe that anyone in this place would support taking away a parent's right to choose an education for their children.
Exactly.
And yet that's what we hear day after day after day in this place, Mr. Speaker. November 15th, 2012, I'd like to quote from Hansard, Mr. Speaker. And I quote Mr. Wotherspoon, quote, Mr. Speaker, almost 1 year ago that government forged ahead, diverting dollars from our publicly funded education system into funding new private schools. Beyond the risk of fragmenting education, it takes dollars away at a time that we need to properly fund and support education in this province. Well, Mr. Speaker, that nothing could be further from the truth. After what the figures that I just read to you, what they say, there's nothing further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. We're supporting all education and all students in our province, Mr. Speaker, at record levels.
You bet.
Mr. Speaker, we are protecting choice for parents to send their child to the school that will provide the best education for them, for the future, and beyond. So, Mr. Speaker, as I started out by saying, I'm going to support the motion from the member from Regina Gardner Park. I'm going to stand with the students and the parents in this province, and I'm going to continue to do the work that our government is doing especially as it relates to the Theodore decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right on. Here.